Hello and welcome back to this series behind the scenes. This is part 2 and this is all about your circumstances. And I have been running my personal brand, even though that is definitely not what I called it many years ago. I stopped telling people I was building a personal brand. It just, I was building, I was going to say an empire. I didn't even mean that either. Doing my own thing, giving this a go, seeing what would happen. And I really felt like I was in that mode in my 20s. And here I am at nearly 43 and I'm still here and it's still happening. And I love it. I really love it. But as I have gone through these last 25 years of doing this, and I always refer it back to being 17, 18, because or I could even go back to 16 actually. You know, in my 2 summers of the first year of sixth form and then the second, I actually came to London for the summer and I did some additional training. And when I moved down at 18, I was in career mode. And I kind of had to do that because I was in a drama school, and it was very prestigious. You weren't there to mess about. There was nowhere to hide. There was only 32 of us in our year, and that was separated into 2 classes. So yeah, you couldn't hide. You were being looked at and analysed and considered the whole time. And so I was always considering, how can I make this work? And that question has been with me continuously, because in that 25 years, my life has changed and my responsibilities and my wants and my needs and my hopes, and some of them have stayed the same, but many of them circumstantially have changed. And I'm not even going to just say a sort of blanket since I became a mum. So I became a mum at 33, and in that time, who I've been in that parent-child relationship or children has always changed as well. You know, the first 6 months were really difficult with my son. I was completely exhausted. My pregnancies were different to how I ran my business. The pregnancies were different from each other, but different at different stages. So for the first 4 months, I would say, of both pregnancies, I could barely leave my bathroom floor. And then at other months, at other points, I had some of the best months in business I've ever had, even though I was heavily pregnant, or nailed amazing opportunities. And this is the thing, as we change and as we move through life, if we are committed to creating this version of life and business that we really want to, we have to be aware and flexible and adaptable and considered to our life. Because I know those stories of the bro marketers who are like, oh, I just did this for 18 hours a day and I lived in my mum's basement and I was committed to the dream. Great. If that's you, brilliant. But the place that I am in my life now, you know, I've got a partner, I've got a house, I've got 2 children who are 8 and 4. If I suddenly turned round and said, I'm just not available, I'm checking out of this situation, I mean, it really wouldn't make me happy, because I chose to have these children and I wanted them more than anything. And I take my role as a parent and my luck, my gift as a parent. I mean, does it always feel like that? Maybe not, but certainly not at 2 o'clock in the morning. But I take it really seriously. So whatever happens with my career, that always has to be considered, because that's not changing, that's not going anywhere, that's not what I want and envisage. I want it all to kind of work together. And this is something I'm definitely finding as the conversation of having children really sort of reveals itself. So 9 years ago, when I was going to kind of mums events and networking, that underlying conversation of being a mumpreneur and like working through nap times and making it work and building and all of this stuff. Now, there was a place for that because I was self-employed, so I wasn't somebody who's going to say, right, or could say, I'm just going to take the next 5 or 6 years off, because also my children are nearly 4 years apart. So that just wouldn't have worked. And we came into this with 2 incomes, and we live in London and things cost money. So there was a lot of that building and working in nap times and scrimping and saving pockets of time here, there and everywhere. But am I now more aware than ever that was a season of my life, and that season feels like it's kind of closed now, that chapter of having tiny babies at home. Never say never, but highly, highly unlikely that I think people now who are having babies are much more like, oh, I can take my time, or I want to parent in a different way. And that's really interesting. People are much better at perhaps saying what their needs are and talking about, and maybe this is post-pandemic as well, but talking about mental health, talking about maternal health, talking about slowing down and not being in the hustle culture. And yeah, it's a really interesting conversation. So I've made that all about me, which I really didn't mean it to be, but hopefully sharing a bit of the behind the scenes of my circumstances has given you some food for thought too. So when I'm talking about your circumstances around what it is that you want to build, it's about finding ways to work with them rather than against them. So, for example, time. Time is always such a difficult thing because there's a limited amount. And it's one of the things that my clients really struggle with because they want to be here, there, and everywhere, doing all of the things. And so when I'm looking at time, for example, instead of saying, I don't have enough, I'm always looking at, well, what pockets of time do I have? And if these are the pockets of time that I have, and if these are my goals, how am I going to maximize this time that I have it now to get me closer to where I want to get to? And this was definitely happening with my exercise this year. I'd always exercised from being a child. I'm not professing to be some kind of athlete, but I've always been physical, whether that's dancing or running or walking, and always kind of beared it in mind because I know I really benefit from it. But certainly my running, like I'd go in for 6 months and then I'd fall off the wagon for a bit, or I'd be like, oh, I haven't been for a run in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, and then some time would just pass again. And what I realized was that nothing was changing in terms of my time. I wasn't suddenly going to have these big windows of time where I had nothing to do. And so that's why that 15 minutes of running, and you can follow along on Instagram and my various other channels, that's why that has been so successful for me, because it's 15 minutes and I'm doing it every single day. And so that for me is an example in terms of exercise. And I know everybody's life and circumstances are different. That's why I'm just using one specific example here. But I know that 15 minutes, I can work with it, and I feel day 170 odd, like I'm doing it. This is part of my life. I am somebody that exercises daily, which is what it was that I wanted. So now thinking about that means I'm on the way. So have a think about your circumstances. What do you want? What's calling you about your business and life? I would love to know. Get in touch. We can book in a strategy session and go from there. Lots of love. Bye.